There are some countries that, although it might seem like they have a viable route towards citizenship, and in some cases they even promise it, it's not necessarily what it looks like, and you might not be able to get it. Hi, my name is Sadife. I'm a senior strategy associate here at Nomad Capitalist, and today we're going to be talking about the comparison of some countries that actually seem like they promise the citizenship, but in most cases you cannot actually get it. A good start is usually with naturalization. And there's not like a specific country that I'm going to talk about here, but usually naturalization routes are not promised. You have to live for a certain amount of years in the country, depending on the country and their requirements, and then at the end apply with the possibility of getting the passport. But this is not promised, and it's usually not obviously guaranteed, which would be the way with like a citizenship by investment, for example. Let's just take like the Caribbean countries. You essentially donate money, you get the citizenship, and it is pretty much guaranteed. But with naturalization, you actually have to, in most cases, invest your time, not necessarily money, but invest time, and you won't be able to essentially know in advance whether you will get the passport in the end or not. In some cases, with naturalization, you might actually get the passport, but it might not be as straightforward. So even if they promise a certain timeline, it might last way more than that. Just for example, Malta. Usually you can naturalize in Malta by legally living there for at least 5 years, but that's only the start. So it doesn't mean that you live 5 years and immediately you get the passport. There is an actual process after you have lived there for 5 years, which you will have to follow in order to obtain the passport. Usually this is very bureaucratic, and it might take like years and years more in order for you to get the passport, if you get it at all at the end. So for Malta, it says 5, but it really is probably more than 15 years until you can get the passport with all of the bureaucracy kept in mind. A similar situation is with Cyprus, where you technically can become a naturalized citizen of Cyprus after living in Cyprus for the majority of the time for about 7 years. Although, again, similarly to Malta, that doesn't necessarily mean that immediately after 7 years you get the passport. It's pretty much going to take years and years after that for you to obtain it, if you are going to be able to obtain it at all. So a similar situation is with Panama, where the route to naturalization they say it's 5 years. So after living in Panama legally full-time for 5 years, you can essentially become a naturalized citizen. But even though they say that, it's technically very rare for someone to be able to obtain a Panamanian passport. So even though they say it's 5, it's pretty much never. On the other hand, Spain, although really delays the process, they actually pretty often give out the passports on naturalization basis. So it usually takes about 10 years of continuous living in Spain in order to naturalize. And after that, it will probably take about 3 or 4 additional years for the processing time, and the total timeline would be about 14 years in order to obtain this passport. Keep in mind that Spain has some treaties. So for example, if you are from certain countries, you will be able to naturalize in sooner than 10 years. So by living there for 2 years, for example. Another thing that's important to note for Spain, though, is that in many cases, they actually do not allow dual citizenship, meaning that you will have to renounce your previous citizenship in order to maintain the Spanish one. So my advice here would be to actually follow countries that have a track record. For example, in Europe, you have Ireland, you have Germany, you have the UK that actually follow their rules. But you have like some southern countries where they generally make exception more often than not. So this is why you should really do proper research before you move to a certain country for the purposes of essentially getting the passport, either it being through naturalization or through a different route. Here at Nomad Capitalist, we have a dedicated team to ensure that you have a smooth process. So if you want to work together, you can do so by applying through our website, nomadcapitalist.com. You can also use our website to check out more articles if you want to read more about like any of the countries that I've mentioned today, but more countries as well.